The next technique I teach is called containing the storm. This is a basic club defense technique, and this is against an opponent brandishing a club. So again, we're talking a little bit about preemptive self-defense. The reason that I wanted to include this technique, again, this is a technique I picked up from another instructor that I taught with for a while, and I liked it. I thought it was a great idea. And the reason I wanted to include it in what I teach is I saw a video on the internet years ago. It's kind of hard to find, but if you dig around, you'll find it. A couple of skateboarders out in the street. This is a real fight video. Causing trouble, harassing people, hitting cars with skateboards, just, you know, thugs, right? Somebody, some civilian, eventually has had enough of that, and so he confronts these skateboarders. He's like, hey man, you know, knock it off. And the skateboarder picks up his skate and he brandishes it and he pumps it at the guy. And the guy kind of like flinches and gets his hands up, but the skateboarder doesn't swing. So he pumps it and he holds back, and the guy flinches. He pumps it again, the guy flinches. And this happens a couple of times, and it kind of becomes the boy who cried wolf. And the skateboarder's pumping, and the guy stops thinking he's going to swing. He starts to think, okay, it's an intimidation thing. Now, I don't know if he had these thoughts consciously, but watching the video, you can see the progression in a very short period of time of how the attacker programs his victim into thinking that there's not going to be a swing coming. And finally, he pumps, and the guy doesn't flinch, and the skateboarder brings that board down and just brings the trucks down right across this guy's face. I mean, just destroys him with one blow with this skateboard. It's brutal. If you look it up, I mean, it really is disturbing when you see somebody get hit like that. You know that that's potentially a fatal strike. At the very least, you know, this guy might need facial reconstructive surgery. He's in bad shape, right? You get hit like that with a weapon like that, you're destroyed. That's a fight ender, and it clearly was here. I mean, and this was the bad guys winning the fight, right? Because they're starting trouble, and somebody comes up to him and says, hey, stop starting trouble, and boom, he gets a skateboard across the face. So because of that, when I saw this technique, I thought that's perfect, that's what I want. So the defense here, again, is an opponent brandishing a club. And you can do this two hands, one hand. The way I teach it is a two-handed brandish. And this is important because we're going to interact with this crossing arm. So our opponent's holding up a club like this, almost like baseball stance, right? Although maybe a little bit more in front. But again, you'll see pretty quickly it works no matter how he's holding it up. What we're going to do is, as soon as he brandishes, we're going to step in and jam. And that's something that we drill a lot with all our weapons, something called jamming the brandish. If an opponent's holding a weapon out, or he's reaching for a weapon, we'll practice jamming the draw as well. We want to get in there and control that before the weapon's deployed, right? I don't want to have to evade and parry and you know, dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge versus a weapon. What I'd much rather do is isolate it before it comes into play, control it, and take the will away from my attacker. Because remember, weapons are only an extension of his will. He can have an atomic bomb strapped to his back and a Hellfire missile on his shoulder, and if I knock him out, I don't need to worry about that. So as he holds up this weapon, I'm going to come in and jam his arms, and I'm going to control that lead arm, right? I'm not just going to put my hands on it, I'm going to grab it and control it. And again, as the student gets more advanced, we can start talking about horsebite pinching. We can start talking about a lot of different, you know, tendon manipulation and nerve control and things like that, get really penetrating into the meat of the arm. At this point, I just want to get their hands on it and control, right? From there, they're going to knee strike with their rear knee, land back, and pull one arm off and elbow strike to the head. Now, the basic technique is very simple. Grab, knee, elbow. But when we drill this technique, it's going to be, you know, grab, knee, knee, elbow, 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 knee. Control with the arm, put the guy on the ground. So again, so often within these techniques, we touched on this with escaping the bear. Yeah, in the technique, it's hammer and turn. But if the hammer the first time isn't enough, hammer him repeatedly, right? Hit him in the head. Put something in your hand and be jabbing him with it. Same concept here. I'm going to step in and I'm going to knee, but if that one knee doesn't loosen him up, I'll knee him again, right? Now, ideally, that knee is going to go to the groin or the body. If I need to, I'll knee him in the thigh, right? I'll do whatever I need to do to get the effect I need on my opponent. From there, knee, control, elbow strike, control. And again, we're always returning to control. We do that a lot. The reason for that, and you'll see this when we explore some later techniques, is there's a lot of places I can go with that arm. And you notice the previous technique we did, we had the arm control here. Here, we have the arm control here. Some of the later club techniques we teach, similar concept. Control the arm, Knee strikes, control the arm, returning to control. So the idea here is to preempt our opponent's attack. He brings that club up, and we're immediately exploding in, controlling it, and striking our opponent. And that's how we'll drill this technique. One of the basic drills I like to do with this is have an opponent holding the weapon either behind their back, down at their side, whatever. They're armed, but they haven't brought it into play yet. And the defender, maybe they have their hands up, maybe it's a self-defense scenario, so they're prepared to engage, but they're sort of waiting, right? And as soon as that attacker brings that weapon up to prepare to strike with it, the defender's going to explode in, control, and strike. Okay, and we'll drill this just face on, so I'm holding it down, boom, that's your chance. We'll drill this in a circle where we're moving around, and as soon as I pull it up, you're exploding in. So we're building that stimulus response into the student, that as soon as they see the weapon come into play, boom, they're attacking. And like I said, we're also going to drill this as jamming the draw, so maybe he's got the club tucked in, or maybe he's reaching for it. That's another drill I like to do. Put a club on a table or on a surface. As club use, I like to practice picking up a weapon, right? Pick it up off a table, pick it up off the floor, and use that as part of my attack. As defense, as soon as that guy reaches for a club, whether it's sitting on a table, it's in his jacket, it's in his belt, wherever it is, as soon as he goes for it, attack, control, and pummel, basically, with strikes, I mean. So in this defensive drill, he already has the club, but he hasn't introduced it yet. And we're not going to wait, because as I discussed in that earlier video, the guy brings his hands up, the skateboarder, and he goes to strike, and his defender waited. His defender let the attacker pick his moment to strike, and of course, he picked the moment when the victim was least prepared to defend, right? Every time he flinched or got his hands up, the guy didn't strike. He didn't strike until the defender did nothing, and then boom, and it's done. So we're going to change that in our students. I want them to have an instinct that as soon as this guy gets here, that's intent, right? He has expressed his intent to hit you with that weapon. That's all you need. So you blast in there, control the arm, you're hitting him with strikes. We'll practice it switching and hitting with strikes so that we're working on both sides, and we'll practice this around and around and around and around. So that's the idea of containing the storm. It's the idea that before he gets into any of his strikes, which we're going to practice later, all these different club attacks and defenses against him. But again, I wanted to start the beginner with, don't worry about dodging a club, don't worry about parrying a club. If you see a club, attack, right? Attack your opponent. So much of our defenses that we practice are attacks. It's that idea of aggressive self-defense. And there's a flip side to that too, that we're also going to train all these self-defense techniques as offensive techniques, right? So most of the time in kenpo, our defensive maneuver is actually footwork. It's step off the line, step out of range, step into the eye of the circle. But the counter-offensive combination has an offensive application. So here, it's the knees and the elbows, and that's pretty basic stuff. And we'll drill that on the shields, and we'll drill that in line drills, and we'll drill that on the body. And this is one of the ways we do that. I'm a big believer in disguising repetition by using multiple delivery methods to get the same point across. So our opponent's got the weapon, and as soon as he comes up, we're checking, we're controlling, right? We're anchoring the elbows down. I don't want the elbows to flare. I don't want to try to control him out here. I want to really control that guy and have my elbows in tight, and I come in with my knees and my strikes until I subdue my opponent, right? You hit him till he stops, okay? And that's how we'll practice this technique. That's containing the storm. If you guys have any questions, let me know.